Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're going to work on a treat today, one that you don't see too much around. This is the Penn 345 Super Levelwind. It's the GTI series, made in the US. So this reel is made approximately 15-20 years ago, for sure. It's missing some pieces and parts. Don't be alarmed by that. This is Scott's reel, and Scott has adapted this reel for an electric drive. So what he's asked me to do is to clean it up, make sure that everything is intact so that he can keep fishing with this one. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. So we're going to do a basic take apart, cleaning and reassemble of the reel. If any parts are needed, we'll go out and make sure that they get ordered. But overall, you'll learn what's inside this reel, how it's set up, and if you're thinking about buying one, you'll know a little bit about it. And if you're thinking about repairing one, if you have one, then you'll see how it's done. So normally I tell you we're going to take off the pieces and parts from the outside, but for the most part they're already off. I do wear a protective glove on my hand here. That's to keep the greases and the like off of it. I also use a parts tray. In this case, those parts are going to be pretty big, so we'll see if I need to use two. So as I get started, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel for everything you're doing during the pandemic. Your efforts truly are appreciated, whether you're in healthcare or essential services or vaccine development, any of that stuff. Thank you for what you're doing. We really could not be getting by without you. So, all right, well, there's two remaining screws in the side plate here. I don't think that third one there has to do with the side plate at all. I believe that that's actually holding the rest of the gearing in, so we'll see in a moment. Yep, we can take this apart. What you're going to notice is we have a couple of bearings on the spool. We have one on that side. We have a smaller bearing in the back case. We have a lot of grease in there, so we're going to go ahead and get that out of the way. And to do that, we're going to take the other side plate off to do that part of the service. Okay, we have a bar in here. That bar is holding on your Levelwind assembly. I'm not sure if this will just pull right out. We'll service that in a moment. And we're going to go ahead and remove this. This is a graphite frame. And the graphite frame is held in by a few typically Penn type of screws. And I want to get there because there's a lot of dirt and grease and grime and junk, so you want to pay attention to that, whether you're dealing with a big reel like this or whether you're dealing with a smaller reel like the Penn 9, for example, the smallest in their Levelwind lineup. Then there's no sense in letting the dirty grease and grit and junk get in the way there, because if you don't pay attention to it, it's going to come back to haunt you later on by trapping dirt and debris and the like. And if it gets trapped in there, it's going to act as an abrasive, and it's going to start deteriorating down the pieces and parts. I've taken the main frame off. There's two more screws that need to come out there. I've been putting those screws in the side tray of my tray there, and I wanted to make sure that all of those screws are the same size. And it looks like I have to take this one off as well, because I want to get the trim ring off to go in there and do the cleaning. So a lot of effort there, but overall it's necessary. There's no sense, if you're going to spend the time cleaning and repairing a reel, servicing it, to skip anything. You're only going to do it once a year, maybe twice at most. Don't take any shortcuts. Not worth it. Okay, all of the screws are out. We should be able to get this off now. Let's see if we can just do a simple pull. We can. And that's why I wanted to do it. I knew there was going to be dirt on the back here, and this grease is kind of old and tired on this side, so we want to do our best here to do that cleaning. So you don't see this one around too much. Typically, when you get into the bigger reels, the ones that are going to be used for trolling and the like, they don't have that Levelwind feature on it. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, the Levelwind kind of doesn't stand the test when you're fighting big fish. It's the weak point in the system, and if you come under load and under stress, what typically is going to happen is that the Levelwind gear, whether it's going to be this plastic gear here called the idler gear, or the other ones, the bar itself, or the worm drive, something's going to give in there, and that's by design. It's the design is that there needs to be a weak link, otherwise the whole reel could become trash. And the weak link typically is this idler gear that I just took off. Alright, we're going to just clean this up now. This is a plastic gear, so it doesn't require any kind of lubrication, but I do see that it was lubricated on the metal side, and that's okay. Plastic gears by their nature are petroleum products, so you don't need to do anything with them. You want to clean all of the grooves, make sure that there's not any kind of dirt or debris in there. I'm just using a flat bladed screwdriver to get in there and do that for me, and we're okay there. I want to use my paper towel, and I'm going to use a little bit of a penetrating oil just to loosen that grease in there, get that out of the way. Then I'll clean it up with a cotton swab and a paper towel. And you want to just kind of take the time to do it right, and you'll be happy with the results if you do it that way. If you take that shortcut, for example, not pulling off the side plate and maybe just trying to clean the teeth, you never know what's going to be hiding back there. And quite honestly, there's a lot that can be trapped in a small space. I've learned that from a variety of reels. So I've learned the extra minutes that you spend doing this pay deep rewards for the time invested. Okay, I think we're pretty clean on that. I'm not quite sure what this tan grease is, but I will replace that with some Penn grease, and it should be fine. Alright, we have this. I'm not going to lube this. As I mentioned, it's a petroleum product. I'll put a little bit of lube on the other side of that seems like a little bit of an issue here trying to get this little washer out. Here we go. Put the screw in first, that would help hold the washer. I'll put the lube back on that metal one, and the reason I'm going to do that is that's the worm gear drive, so you do want to make sure that you have that one pretty well lubed up. We'll put some grease on that. Alright, start by hand. That's generally the best thing to do. That way you know you won't cross strip anything. Tighten that down. So once we've reattached the idler gear, the next one up then would be the drive for the worm gear. Pay attention on this one. There's a raised side and there's a flat side. I want to get grease on both sides here. So there's no stud on this like you would see on some, but there is an indentation in the case here, so that tells you that the piece with the raised side faces down. And then once you face it down, just give it a spin, make sure that it's doing what it should be doing before you go ahead and cover that up. So we've done that. Let's go ahead and align the side plate then. Make sure that that snaps on nicely. Clean that up if there's any residual greases or the like. Make sure that we oil that bearing. I'm going to use Penn Precision oil for that. And then we're ready to reinstall that side plate. So grab your harness or your solid frame. There's 4 pieces to that. I like to align it to so that I can start the middle first. It generally centers the rest of them if you can get one in the middle. If you you start on a corner, you'll have the same result, but you may have a lot of swing going on here. I just started. I don't tighten them all the way down. And I do recall that all of these were the same in terms of the length of the screw and the thread of the screw, so there's an interchangeability going on here. And again, I won't leave that till the end. I want to get all 4 of them started before I tighten any of them down fully. Right, and then we can finish tightening these up. So, a lot of folks ask, should I use a mechanical screwdriver for things like this, where there's just long screws that take a little bit of time to put them in? And my recommendation is no, particularly on something like this with a graphite frame. Those mechanical screwdrivers do have a lot of torque in them, and it's easy enough to crack something and then regret it later. But if you don't have the hand strength, I'll tell you, go ahead and do this, but just stop the completion of that before. Don't drive them all the way in. Leave them proud. Stop it a little bit, and then finish the rest by hand. All right. This is the harness lug for your rigs. If you weren't paying attention, you should pay attention. This goes to the back side of the reel. That's a good place to tell you, go ahead and take pictures if you weren't taking pictures before, because it's easy enough to confuse the two. Now this one has a stud that fits in a case hole here, but if you started not knowing that, then you could find yourself very easily putting the other piece on, turning it around, thinking 345 faces to the front, only that when you got on the other side, you'd have some difficulty kind of aligning the case pieces. So take pictures along the way. Of course, I'm taking pictures with the video, but you can use a cell phone camera, digital camera, just about any kind of thing that will take pictures, and tablet, whatever, and use it as a reference point. There's certainly times I get stuck and I go back to find out where a particular piece went. There's a bar that comes in here. We talked about that one before. This one has got a little bit of some chrome loss on it. I'm just looking for a piece of steel wool. I might be able to polish that up a little bit. No such luck, but at least we'll keep it clean so that as it rides along, as that level wind feature rides along, it'll do the right thing there. That's going to sit in here like this. And I don't think that there was a left or a right side to that. Now that bar's symmetrical, but it's going to ride up here when we go to reinstall. Let's go over to the level wind feature, and then we'll get over to the gearing side of this. You want to, whenever you're working on a level wind reel, you want to pull the cap and inspect the pawl. The pawl is a V-shaped metal gearing. You can see it here. You want to check for two things. You want to check that the studs are even. You want to take that out of the cap. Put a nice dose of oil in there so it spins freely in that cap. And then you want to check making sure that the forks on that are even, because if you have them bent on one side or the other, what's going to happen is it'll get to the corner and it won't be able to turn around. So once you do that, come on back in, reinsert that back into the carrier, and then you're going to have to play around with this one a little bit, because the fork rarely aligns with the groove in the lined worm gear. So you just have to kind of make sure that you turn it as you turn this, and eventually you will get it in the groove along the way. So that one It's not quite there yet. So you kind of use that worm drive to align that fork properly. Just turning until eventually you'll get it where it's driving the guide. And that's what we have now. You can see the line guide moving as I'm turning it. Alright, that's that side. The drive side on this is rectangular. And so when you go to put that in, you're going to have to find how it meshes into the piece to the point where you've got it in that gear that we just worked on. Turning this should turn the idler gear. And you can see that happening here. Okay, then that hook goes that way and this little bar goes here, and that bar will fall out 3 more times before we're finished, but we're just going to take that assembly and place that aside now. Alright, there's really nothing you do on this side. This side has the case opening, and we can see the same thing here that we saw on the other side. We have a 2 big screws left from this. We have pretty much greased up here, and this is a good place to take the picture, right? It has the jack assembly. You'll notice that the springs are on top of the yoke. I'm going to remove the yoke and gear here. Remove the main gear stack, the yoke, the jack. Notice where your anti-reverse dog is. We'd like to remove the bridge sleeve as well. Out of the way. I'm going to remove our 2 tie downs on this collar. And that'll enable us to remove the gear sleeve. And I'm just laying these on my desk. I'm not putting them into the parts tray yet, because I'm just going to clean and kind of bring it back up. Alright, here's your gear sleeve assembly. Here's the bearing. That's why I wanted to get to that. So what you want to do is you want to clean off your bearing, which we just did, and you want to get oil on that bearing. Once you've oiled the bearing, you can reseat that into the carrier. And there's this little collar that we took off that goes back on. Line those holes. Let's go ahead and put the 2 screws back in on that. Grab the other side. So a lot of this reel service is always about keeping reels clean and lubricated. It's so important, especially with saltwater reels, because of all of the spray and all of the effects of salt water. You very easily contaminate reels, get them trapped in places like that bearing behind us there, and in the end it's just becomes very difficult to keep them clean. So take your time when you service it to make sure that that's done properly. So I just had the misfortune of having my battery pack run out, so I'm not sure if we were spraying this down or not, but we're spraying the jack with the WD-40 like product. I'm going to get me mad, but it's a penetrating oil nonetheless. I'm just going to clean up what I can. We want to make sure that this is free of any kind of corrosion because it needs to slide easily. So I think we're at the point where this is free of corrosion, but we have tarnish, and you can't do anything about that. So, yep, we're nice and clean. This is going to go in the channel. I'll put some grease on the back of the jack. Just so that it slides nice and easily. Don't want to overload it, but you do want to make sure that it gets well greased. Alright, that's going to sit in here like that. Let's go ahead and clean up the yoke. Again, I don't know what this putty type grease is. It's clogging, but again, service has everything to do about cleaning. This is shaking the camera, I apologize. Just cleaning it up. I'm using just a 4/0 steel wool that's mildly abrasive, mostly for polishing. Okay, checking the pinion gear again. We want to make sure again that it's clean, and it is. There's just a little bit of residual grease sitting in there. So let's go ahead and clean the channels out. You want to check to make sure that the teeth are uniform and not bent or broken. That would become problematic. And then let's just go ahead and grease this. Get a nice amount of grease onto the shoulders of that yoke. Want to insert our pinion gear. Get a good amount of grease onto the teeth of the pinion gear. And in this case, you need to remember the orientation. This is going to grab the spool, so that's spool side out. And then remember we had those two springs. Those are going to ride on the posts. Before I do that, the jack is going to ride inside there like that. That completes that assembly. So let's go over to our main gear assembly, where we are loaded with the same grease. Just grab those washers. The washers are in good condition. These are the HT100 Penn washers. I'll make sure that you clean the cavity as well as the external part of the gear. You can use whatever you like in terms of product. In this case, I'm going to use a hard bristle brush, just because there's a lot more cavities there. There's nothing that indicates that there's any kind of broken sand or things like that in here. So you can leave a mild coating of the old grease. Okay, that sits on top, intersects with the main gear. While we put that main gear and pinion gear together, we want to make sure both get a good dose of oil, greases there. So we'll take care of that right now. And then let's check what we have here in terms of the orientation of these washers. So we have a couple of rounds and a couple of eared washers. And we have HT100 washers. You don't need to necessarily lube the HT100s, but I'm going to. This is a heavy duty reel. I'm going to use Cal's Universal Dry Grease, a little bit of a dip in there, and then I'm just going to wipe the excess off. So it goes fabric washer first, and it goes in this case I'm going to believe that the eared washer is going to be the first one. You can check. I want to make sure that there's room in that collar there for both of the eared washers. Usually you have a round eared round. In this case we've got the extra. So that's the second of the washers. Second of the eared washers. forth. This is a big stack here. And that one, I think I'm right, because that one would be very close to not catching if it was the eared washer. Last of the fabrics. One more of the round washers. Looks like we have a brass shim next. We have a big bearing comes up next. I'm going to go ahead and oil this bearing. So we've seen 3 of the 4 bearings. The other one's going to be on the spool. That'll be bearing number 4. 2 more shims here. That completes the internal side of this drive. We want to take our side plate and make sure that we get the old grease out of that. And we want to oil the eccentric just to make sure that we have a nice free spool going. When we go for the free spool, we want to leave this in the up position and have the stud on the eccentric in the up position when we go to remount the case. And that should just remount like this. And then just swing it a little bit, make sure that you pull in on the jack. Make sure. And now you can tell that we have that because you're watching the gear go in and out. Okay, so that's the setup here. One more piece then is cleaning up the spool. And again, whatever this grease is, it's time to replace it. So we have 2 drivers on the spool. We have one for the click ratchet and we have one for the worm drive. Make sure they're clean, free of debris. We have the bearing on the spool here. Same idea. Clean it up. Just take that bearing off for a moment, clean out behind it. Do the same thing here, give it a nice drink of oil. I oil my bearings, I don't grease them. And go ahead and reassemble that. Alright, kind of coming down to the wire then, aren't we? Put this back. As I mentioned, this little rod will get in the way. Go ahead and seat your spool. You can level up your line guide. Make sure you get that guide bar back in. We should be able to just put the whole assembly in. A little bit of a balancing act. So that's it then. That's the Penn 345 GTI Super Levelwind fishing reel, ready for the electric motor attachment to it. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more of these, please subscribe. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section of this video, and I will be happy to provide you with an answer. So again, please stay safe. Stay out of harm's way, do the things we're supposed to be doing during this pandemic, and take care of yourself. Best wishes. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.